and welcome to my channel. I am Zodiac Bandit, and today we have some spoilers for Campaign 3 of Critical Role up to episode 103. So if you aren't caught up yet, I recommend clicking off, getting caught up, and then coming back and watching this video. Unless you don't care about spoilers, in which case you're sticking around, I guess. So yeah, let's get into it. Spoilers. Last chance spoilers. So with the spoiler warning out of the way, we can now move on to the main part of the video, which is in episode 103. Finally, Laudna was freed, technically freed, of Delilah. They used the soul anchor that they found in Aor and trapped Delilah within it, so now Laudna can use the power of Delilah freely of herself without being at risk of Delilah taking over and being in control. However, the question for today is, was this a bit of a mistake? Was there a better use for Delilah's powers? Let's get into it. So let me be clear right now, as far as storytelling and as far as like character growth goes, or the character story and the arc overall, no, this was not a mistake. This is what has been being built up towards for the Laudna character for a very long time. This whole power struggle dynamic between Delilah and Laudna has been the point of her character, to have this sort of being inside you who is like effectively like a drug that you need to keep fueling. Like it's a drug addiction you need to keep fueling, which was the whole character, right? So this is what the story has been building to. So as far as like storyline wise, this isn't a mistake. However, I think the timing of it is a mild mistake, because now this power that Delilah has that she showed off in episode 102, where she like takes over Laudna's body and starts having more abilities, is no longer going to be accessible. Or at least, you know, that's the theory, that she can't use that power anymore. It's no longer going to be within Laudna's grasp to use this, which could have been a very useful tool for the party if need be. And the reason I think this power-up is so important, or at least should have been, like, at least a talking point for them to not do this ritual yet, is because the other members of the Bell's House, specifically 4 members of the Bell's House, as of right now, currently have power-ups. Imogen obviously has her now new Havoc form that she got, I think, level 14, but she also has, like, the Exalted Ruidus Born powers lying in dormant, which we don't know the upper levels of the strength of that yet. Like, she used it to level city blocks early in the campaign, so imagine if she eventually gets, like, access to that. And then Fern and Ashton obviously both have their elemental forms, and it seems Ashton has multiple variations of his form, and it like just makes them stronger in general. It does have a big penalty to it, but that's okay. A penalty for that much power is very good. And then there's Chetney, who has his werewolf form, and yeah, while it just gives him like resistance to non-magical slashing, piercing, and bludgeoning, that's pretty good for like, you know, overall. Some people have theorized that Chetney is going to get a new power-up eventually, and I happen to agree. I think him getting like that super werewolf form eventually would be really cool, but who knows. And then, of course, there are other members of the Bell's House who don't have them, specifically Orym. Orym is the only one who, like, in my opinion, you could look at and be like, that truly doesn't have a transformation. FCG technically had, like, a mindset switch, right? Like, he would go from being, like, you know, Smiley Day to Murderbot FCG, which I would classify as a transformation. It's a different state of mind, a different state of being, so I would realistically classify that as well. Dorian doesn't have one, and as far as we know, Breus doesn't have one yet either. But Breus does, in fact, go from like being like humanoid face looking to having a more bull-like face as he gets like angry. So technically there's a transformation there. And then there's Laudna. Laudna has, from the offset of this campaign, Form of Dread, which isn't bad, but it isn't great either. And I feel like she could have had another form. She could have had another power-up from Delilah, which is what we saw in episode 102, maybe a bit weaker version of that, because that was pretty crazy. Like, she was able to summon Undead, she was able to summon Craven Edge. Like, there's a handful of things that Delilah form did that was kind of, you know, maybe too much for a player. But a Delilah form now, in my opinion, seems lost behind the fact that she's now stealing power instead of being given power from her patron. And here's how I look at it. In the next handful of episodes that are coming up, they are likely going to run into at least one of the remaining big bads. And the list of big bads that are still around is insane, because we still have Ludinus Deleth, Sora Lord Zethula, the Weave Mind, Predathos, and potentially we still have a potential enemy in Liliana. So there's still 5 big bads floating around, and that's not even counting Iroh Windigoth if he's still kind of like in this sketchy area of we don't know what's happening with him. So realistically, the villains are still like at large. We're 100 plus episodes deep now, and we still have most of the main villains remaining for however many episodes we have left. If it's going to be like 15, 20, 30, we still have 5 big bads remaining, and the Weave Mind have like 5 members in and of itself, right? So realistically, there is a lot of fights coming up, and this is going to be a dangerous set of like episodes. The next little bit of while is going to be a lot of fighting, and is going to be a big, like, you know, big bads, mostly big bads. It's going to be a boss rush at the end of this game. It's going to be insane. So not having this incredible power up, to me, is a mild mistake. So the way that I've always looked at it is like this. They're in a boss fight. They're fighting, say, Sora, Lord Zethruda, and Gloomglut. And they're getting their ass kicked. The Bellshells are losing, and it's not going great. The 8 of them are getting their butts whooped here. And someone needs to do something. Someone needs to do something drastic. Kind of like what FCG did against Otohan Thule. Someone needs to do something drastic. And Delilah has always proven herself that self-preservation is more important than anything else. So in this moment, she gives all of her power to Laudna, and she gets some sort of power-up, similar to what we saw before in episode 102. Maybe it's something a little different, a little weaker, but it's still something to give her a powerful means to defeat their enemies, a way to make sure that potentially they're actually able to walk away from this and not die. And this has now, in my opinion, been taken away from Laudna, because that's not going to happen. Delilah's not going to be like inside this soul anchor and be like, you know what, fuck it, I'm going to give you some power right now. Instead, she's going to be vindictive. She's going to say, you know what, you put me in this little hole, like in this little cage, and I hate you. I would rather us both die now. So fuck you. That is how Delilah's going to view it now. So she's not going to get this massive buff that I have in my mind theoretically. Of course, this is just theoretically. There's nothing truly being stated about it, but I do think this was a very strong possibility of her gaining some sort of power-up mid-fight through Delilah, giving her more power. I think that is definitely something that was on the cards for Laudna and is no longer there. So that's why I think this might be a mild mistake that they've made here, doing it a little too soon, because they've had this soul anchor. They could have done it at any point in time if they really needed to, because Essex's not going anywhere. They could have literally just been like, okay, so we have Delilah, we have this power, and we'll use it eventually, and then eventually we'll come back and do the soul anchor thing. Maybe Delilah would have been too strong by then, so maybe there's that argument that you can make, but I do think maybe this was a little too soon for them to have, jumped the gun. There was at least one more boss fight that they could have used Delilah for, that they might be in some deep shit for before they start, like, truly powering up in levels, because they're getting to that point where they're about to start hitting some power spikes, so hopefully they won't need to have Delilah, but, the thought is always there in my head of, was that too soon? Some of you are probably sitting there going, well, hey, hang on a minute. Why can't Laudna just take all of her power and make her own power up? And the answer is, she totally can. And that's what I think is really cool about like what happened with the Soul Anchor and the way that Matt described it is now she's siphoning power away. So if Laudna really wanted to siphon more power away from Delilah, she totally can. So I just don't think it would be as powerful or as like evil-esque, because I feel like Delilah giving her the power is more like the gate has been completely opened. And the way that I look at it is, and this is going to be a bit of a walk, so if some people, it's going to be, bear with me here. So if you've never seen Naruto before, the character Naruto is very similar to Laudna in the fact that they both have spirits living inside them that they sort of borrow energy from, they borrow power from. So Naruto has the nine-tailed fox within him, and if too much of the nine-tailed fox chakra comes out and it sort of overtakes Naruto, Naruto would become the nine-tailed fox. He would become the thing that lives inside of him, much like how I view Laudna. Laudna, if too much of Delilah's power comes out, she becomes Delilah, or some sort of shadowy version of Delilah. So realistically, it's very similar. However, one thing that does happen within the series of Naruto is Naruto eventually gains control of the nine-tailed fox's like chakra, the energy within the nine-tailed fox, and he's able to access a new like chakra mode. It's what's known as KCM for any of you nerds out there, and it's like some sort of glowing aura of like chakra energy that surrounds him. And I feel like Delilah having her power taken away from Laudna as Laudna chooses to create a new power would be very similar to KCM. I feel like it would be like because the tree of the White Stone tree now compared to what it used to be, is very bright and very luscious. Everything you see is always like the sun behind the sun tree and the light shining through. And I feel like her taking on like a more like godly light aura would be really cool, because she did have a connection to the sun tree before in her form of Dread, before this whole Delilah thing happened and Delilah started like changing the form of Dread, was the Sun Tree. So I believe now you could have a more light version of Laudna, where her hair is no longer like black and it can become white, and like there's a little bit more foliage on herself when the form of Dread comes in, and there's like a tree. I feel like that's just something that could happen. It would be really cool to see, and I feel like that is something that should happen, because that would show like the perfect end arc of Laudna's story, right? Laudna's story has been like, she's been trudging through the darkness, and with her friends has had a couple of times where she's been able to sort of get above the darkness into the light, and now she has full control over the darkness and she can sit in the light as much as she wants. And I very much think that is something that should happen, and I think it would be really cool, and I would love to see artwork of people like, different people's interpretations of like a light form of Dread for Laudna, and I think it'd be really cool. So there you have it. Let me know what you think. Do you think that this was too early for them to sort of seal away Delilah? Do you think this was the perfect time? Do you think that she's going to get a new, like, light form of Dread? Or I guess, not a form of Dread, but like a form of, what's the opposite of Dread? I don't know. A form of something good. But let me know what you think. Do you think any of this will happen? Do you think I'm rambling? Do you think I'm yapping? Do you think I'm crazy? I think I'm crazy. But anyway, I'll see you guys on Friday for the recap of episode 104 of Campaign 3. Peace.